everyone. Welcome back to Purple Vice. Thank you guys for watching and for commenting on last week's episode. So, season 1, episode 8. My husband said it was a slow episode. I disagreed. I thought this was a kind of a wild episode. I've got 12 pages of notes, but I'm going to try my best not to just like straight read them. I also don't want to just simply break down what happened in the episode. I want to take it a step further and just kind of talk about some of the symbolism and foreshadowing and some of the underlining themes also running throughout the show, and just, work on making some predictions for what might come next. We started in the 1996 timeline, kind of right where we left off last week with Taissa's group. So in this scene, we see that they've made this kind of like funeral pyre for Van, who all the women and me last week believed to be dead. There's this gnarly shot where we could see like the teeth through, Van's cheek where there was, I guess, a bite or a slash there. And, you could see her whole jaw. Then, they put Van on the fire. You see her body with the smoke coming out from under it. And all of a sudden, there are these images that would be from Van's perspective. And I'm like, oh man, people in my comments are right. They see her eyes start twitching and they realize that she's alive. They get her right off the fire. Why did nobody check and make sure she was dead? I'd be pretty pissed. Van, makes a funny comment when she wakes up and goes, really? Fire? And they were like, oh, what? I'm sorry, but I just got mauled by a wolf when my girlfriend was supposed to be watching my back, and then my friends immediately went to burn my body. I would not be making quips just like that, but you know what? Van's a better person than me, I guess. We haven't seen any of the burns that she might have had from this, but I'm guessing that they're there. Another thing I was thinking about with that scene was, the first time we really saw Van in a significant way was in episode 1 when she was stuck in her seatbelt, and we had that moment where Shauna ran up to try to help rescue her off the plane when they had just crashed, and Jackie pulls her away. They obviously thought the plane was about to explode or something like that, which is why they were desperate to get out of there immediately rather than staying to help her. And then she shows up with the burnt face, which, like I said last week, very similar to the scars that she now will have from this wolf attack. But, she almost died by fire in that incident as well. So maybe that's why she says, really? Fire? So again, I don't know if she's saying it like, really? Fire? You couldn't have woken me up another way? Or if it's like, really? Fire again? Okay. And then, after the, the intro, credits, all that, we cut to a memory of Laura Lee from before the 1996 timeline. So she looks very similar. It's probably only a year or two earlier, I would guess. Maybe a little more than that. But we see her jump into the shallow end of the pool, head first. Laura Lee. Okay, she hits her head on the bottom. When I rewatched the episode, I actually had to cover my ears because the thunk or whatever from her head hitting the bottom disturbed me so much the first watch that I didn't want to hear it again. Just kind of floating there, you see the blood billowing out. And then the lifeguard who saves her is kind of this typically hot lifeguard bro type. And of course, he's got the big, fairly large cross necklace glinting in the sunlight. And when she's like, you saved me, he says that he didn't save her, God did. Maybe that's why we see her relying on her faith in God to save her once again in this episode. This is a spoiler podcast warning. Don't listen if you haven't watched the whole episode 8. So this memory that Laura Lee has of this moment of being saved, it does relate to her death that occurs later in the episode because, Laura Lee volunteers herself to go and save the other women. Yes, she wants to live, she wants to survive, but she wants to save her team. A moment when she's in the plane and she says, we're really going to do it, we're going to save them. Believes she has a purpose and she's meant to do something. She's the religious girl of the group. None of them have strong religious affiliations to the extent that she does. And then she's the one who ends up being the martyr. And none of the other girls volunteered to go with her, and she didn't ask them to. So it's very interesting. So Laura Lee's faith is something that sets her apart from her teammates. The girls like Laura Lee, but they do see her as different from them. In the previews for next week, it seems like things are going to devolve pretty quickly after Laura Lee's death. Hints that the show might start skewing towards those ritualistic and cannibalistic scenes that we saw in episode 1, and it seems like it happens pretty quickly after Laura Lee's demise. So I almost feel like there's this idea that she was the only one preventing things from devolving sooner. Her purity, her belief in goodness and in the possibility of rescue, her hope kind of kept them in line for a while. And now that she's gone, it looks like it's going to get dark. Okay, then we cut to 2021 at Shauna's house. Her daughter comes home and confronts her over finding Adam's ID. Was that like a couple days ago at this point? Because I know that Jeff has been back home since then. So, Callie points out to Shauna that you don't even know who this guy is. He could be conning you. He could just be trying to sleep with a Yellowjacket. Either he wants to do a tell-all, or who knows? That could be like a kink for somebody. And then she points out that there's no online presence backing up his identity. It's pretty shady, because she's right. Everything is online. Maybe Shauna doesn't realize that, especially somebody who claims to be an artist. Then we see Shauna does take what her daughter said seriously, because there's a scene where we see her researching the Pratt Art Institute. She pretends to be a professor from another university, and she tries to check in on his story that he had been an undergraduate art student there, and they're not able to find anything about him. So at that point, it pretty much backs up what Callie was saying, that there's a good chance that something shady is afoot. Now, we as viewers, we've clearly known that from the second he came on the scene, but for Shauna, this is only just setting in. Then there's this super weird scene still in Shauna's house where Jeff comes home. He brings her a dress, which kind of seems like a nice gesture, but one, he says it in this super weird way. He's like, "Oh my God, what's that? I got you something." All right. And she's like, "Oh, it's not my style at all." And he's basically like, "Oh, well, you married homecoming royalty, so you might want to look like it." Yeah. I was not impressed. So is Jeff an asshole? Really seems like it sometimes, and other times he seems like a great guy, because that whole scene where they had brunch with the Taylors, with, Jackie's family, he really stood up for his wife and was loyal towards her. But everything since then has been a little suspect. Next scene is back in 1996. Travis is alone playing a card game in the cabin. Nat comes up. She wants to try to go for a walk or hunt or something. He tells her to go ahead because she's better at it than he is. He's obviously in a bad mood, still salty because of the scene that we saw last week where their attempted sexcapade did not exactly pan out. Then immediately that scene is juxtaposed and cut directly to 2021. We see, older Nat, wasted. She's putting on a lot of eyeliner. She's going all over the place. She's drinking whiskey and crawling all over her bed. It's all very sexual somehow, even though I don't know if it's supposed to be. Then she mutters, "Fuck you." And then I'm thinking who's she saying fuck you to? But then we see she's texting her drug dealer some snowflakes. So we know what that means. She's super off the wagon. She's ready to do some blow. And when she says fuck you, I wonder if that was fuck you to Travis, right? Because she had said they were always trying to keep each other clean. So maybe the fuck you was "Oh, fuck you, I'm just going to do it." Maybe it was to herself. Maybe it was to Kevin, because she basically told him to, screw off last week. Not sure exactly who that was directed towards, but we know what's going to happen next. Okay, then we cut back to 1996. Again, we have Nat. So these three scenes really juxtapose one another and show how much Nat has changed from the 1996 timeline to the 2021 timeline. I would argue that she changes the most out of our core four women, more than Shauna, Misty, or Taissa. But the thing that really stands out to me about the ways that Nat has changed is that her younger self, she gets angry and stuff, but she seems very level-headed, kind of reasonable, calm, the type of person I personally would actually trust and want to be friends with probably. Whereas older Nat is just, I don't know what's happened to her. I mean, we know some messed up stuff has happened to her, but older Nat is just on a downward spiral. She is very self-destructive. She doesn't seem to care who she hurts. All she cares about is solving this case with Travis, and she seems like she'll do almost anything. So we see Nat walking with the rifle. she sees Coach Ben is sitting by the river. He's leaning against like a log, kind of like his 1 foot in the river. She jokes with him about like Misty leaving. And then she says that she doesn't think Misty was his type anyway, and says like, oh, you like guys, right? And he seems pretty worried and shocked that she has figured this out. And then she follows up with, well, you know, you never look at our boobs, and I think it's cool. And do you have a boyfriend? And he admits to her that he had been dating this guy, Paul, and he was a writer, and he moved to the city. He had the chance, you know, to be with him for real. And obviously he did pass up on that chance, I guess. She asks him if he thinks Travis is gay also, and he basically reassures her that that's not the case and that Travis is in deep and really cares about her. This seems like a pretty mature interaction between a coach and one of his players. So when you juxtapose this scene and this conversation between Nat and the coach with her actions in 2021, it really continues to highlight how much she's changed. Like, she's so level-headed, so accepting, mature, empathetic, reasonable when she's talking to her coach. And I don't know if the older version of Nat would just be that way. Not to say that she'd be judgmental about him being gay, not at all. I just think that she might not care enough to even have the conversation. She doesn't really seem like she cares about other people and their experiences, at least not since she found Travis dead. So then we cut over to Taissa's group in 1996. They are like walking. She's carrying Van back towards the cabin. Van's awake, but she's very unsteady looking. Her face is wrapped in like a t-shirt or something like that. Misty and the other 2 girls are also there. And Misty is kind of like listing off the first aid that they're going to want to do when they get her back. And Van is like mumbling. She says to leave her because it's not safe. She tells Taissa, let them go. I was very curious what this was all about because it almost seemed like she was having some type of vision or premonition. Or maybe it's just because she's so bloody, she's afraid the wolves will come back. I don't know what she meant by like, it's not safe, let them go. But Taissa tells the girls to run to the cabin as fast as they can and that they're going to be coming up behind them. And then like the scene ends, Van falls to the ground. And we cut to Misty and Jess in the basement. The phone is ringing in Nat's live feed, and like Jessica mentions like your phone's ringing, and she's like, oh no, it's just the phone on my live feed, I'm just spying on my friend in her room. And she's just like, Jessica is just like so then, you know, she looks and she's watching Nat's live feed for a moment. She sees the coke deal go down and she's like, no, and she runs out the door. Clearly her plan is to stop Nat's deal before it could happen. Back in 1996, Jackie is outside near the lake. Travis is there. He says he's worried that he fucked up with Nat. Jackie says relationships are bullshit. Trust me. Clearly she's referring to, the fact that she's just found out in the last episode that Shauna is sleeping with Jeff through Shauna's diary. And now she obviously feels like the relationship she had with him was bullshit, which is valid. I don't think she would have spoken that way about relationships if she hadn't just learned that information. In general, just seems like she's on a quest to hurt everybody and anybody. Like, she's been burned. She got burned by her friend Shauna, who betrayed her, and she is like ready to hurt somebody, anybody in this episode. So she's talking to Travis. She's being so rude about Natalie. She's saying how Nat has low standards, and then she mentioned, oh, she was screwing this guy Bobby. Of course, Bobby who? Bobby Farley. I'm pretty sure that's the guy who's been bullying Travis about like calling him Flex or whatever. Out that not only did Nat lie to Travis when she said she'd only slept with 2 guys, but she slept with somebody who he has like a negative history with and who he hates. And back in 2021, obviously the drug deal went down. We didn't see it, but Nat is about to do some blow. This is a continuation of the juxtaposition from 96 to 21 that highlights Nat's downward spiral. And it seems like this downward spiral can mostly be attributed to Travis's death, because in episode 1, Nat left rehab. This was a nice bougie rehab paid for by Taissa, so it's not like it really cost her anything to go through with it. But at the same time, like, she seemed like she was in pretty good shape, but everything we've seen from her since his death has been just getting worse and worse. He's about to do a line. Misty runs in just in time. This scene was wild. She knocks Nat down, and then instead of just like spilling it, she just goes and gets in there and does it. Misty. That was absurd. But yes, scatters it all over the place and she throws it in the air. Like, this was funny. They have like a little scuffle. The fact that Misty like ran in there and did the line though, that was funny. And it just also continues to contribute to this growing picture of Misty as just being absolutely batshit crazy. Then we go back to 1996. We see Nat run into Travis outside the cabin. She like wants to talk to him. She's feeling good about this because she's just had that kind of pep talk with Coach, and she's probably thinking like, yeah, he's gonna be happy to get another chance with me, all that. But instead, he has just gotten this information from Jackie. He confronts her about sleeping with Bobby and about lying to him about the number of people that she's slept with. She says that she didn't tell him because she didn't want him to hate her. And then she didn't know anything about the whole stupid flex thing. She said that she made a mistake, and he says, like, I guess I did too. Yeah, Nat goes for the low blow, like big time, and she goes, oh, I guess it's a good thing you couldn't get it up because this would be a lot harder if we had actually fucked. Honestly, Travis's face when she said that, first of all, great acting. It was well done. It's pretty heartbreaking. He just kind of like takes a minute, process what she said, and was like, okay, and just walks away. And in that moment, you really are like, fucked up bad, Nat. It's gonna take him a minute to get over that one. So some of the things that really stand out to me about this scene are like Travis's insecurity with Nat's sexual history really annoys me, but I think in this, at least particular instance, it's really wrapped up with his insecurity about being bullied and being called Flex and this nickname that he was given by the same guy, Bob Farley, or whatever, Bobby Farley. But even still, like, his jealousy, his possessiveness, like, his nervousness, his insecurity, none of it is a good look. None of it bodes well for their relationship. None of it points towards a healthy relationship in the future or healthy habits in the future. So it's definitely concerning. I wonder if this moment could potentially be the beginning of Nat's downward spiral. I mean, you know, the director wanted us to see this juxtaposition throughout the episode, flashing back and forth, focusing on Nat, showing the ways that she's changed, or really showing perhaps even kind of these moments that led to this change in her. So I don't know. I mean, we know that they do go on to have an important relationship later on, but you know, these seem like some potentially damaging moments. Another question I had, and I would love to know what you guys think, so leave me your thoughts in the comments. Who thinks, you know, was Nat justified in not telling Travis, like, her number or whatever, her body count? It is her private business. She doesn't really, like, need to tell somebody that, but at the same time, lying is also not the move. So where do you fall on that? Because I'd love to hear your thoughts about, you know, is Nat justified in not telling Travis about her sexual history? Is that her business? Does it justify a lie, or is she still kind of shitty for lying? Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. We cut back to Nat and Misty in the hotel. So much more comedy from this duo in this episode. Nat is just standing there, and she's just like, you wasted $300 in coke. She looks stricken. I was laughing. Misty goes, A, I will Venmo you. B, I couldn't just sit there and watch you destroy your life. A, I will Venmo you. Yes. So she says, I can't just sit there and watch you destroy your life. So she totally outs herself that she's been spying on Nat. Nat grabs the owl, cracks it, finds the camera. Misty is like, I've been working day and night to solve Travis's case. And she essentially tries to justify spying on Nat by saying, like, this is what friends do. They look out for each other. And, you know, I've been trying so hard to help you. And, you know, she's just basically making it seem like Nat should be grateful that she was been spying on her and that she was there in time to prevent her from doing drugs. And that really is just all her being a good friend. I think Misty does think she's being a good friend. The idea of friendship is holding on. You know, we see that with the coach. Like, her chopping off his leg was necessary. I think the power that gave her, and we saw it with her face in that first episode with the blood splatter, like that moment, that feeling of power, like he now needs her. And then we saw her poisoning him later on. She's a nurse that, you know, works in a nursing home where she basically decides when these people eat, when they sleep, how much pain they feel, when they go to the bathroom, all that. And, like, you know, she clearly loves the control, right? So her watching Nat, knowing what Nat's doing, being able to stop Nat from doing drugs, it's control, right? So like her idea of being a good friend is just holding on for dear life and making sure that that person needs her. She's like the definition of Munchausen's, right? It's alarming. Then we cut back to 2021. Shauna is at home with her family. She's having dinner. Doorbell rings. She looks nervous as hell. Clearly she thinks it's going to be Adam at the door, right? As the audience, we all thought it was Adam, didn't we? So I'm like, oh shit. But it's Taissa. So they pretend they haven't seen each other in 20 years and they go on a walk. The scene really surprised me because there's been so much secrecy surrounding like how much does Taissa know about like her role as this like bad one. And then all of a sudden it all just comes out in this episode, like everything. She knows everything. And she's actually going to tell Shauna everything. Like she's incredibly candid. She tells her everything that's been going on, the sleepwalking, the problems with Simone, the dog going missing. She says that she's fucking up her kid bad. That Sammy has seen her sleepwalking and that he thinks that there's this other alternate, version of her, the bad one. So, and Shauna just kind of like quietly processes all of it and just is like, how bad is it this time? And clearly she's already familiar with the sleepwalking and the issue in general and seems to have some idea of how severe it can get because she doesn't seem like shocked to hear about sleepwalking. And these two clearly have a strong bond. And like, yes, we're seeing that in the earlier timeline, but I don't think that they were that close before their team got stranded in the wilderness. But the experiences that they had there have like bonded them like through trauma, through experience, through survival. And, it's actually like a really powerful female friendship on the show. And the scene ends with them like a nice silhouette shot of them like hugging under like in the middle of the street with the street light. Scenes between them I really like, some nice moments. Like yes, they are slower moments, but I like the development that we're seeing with this friendship and with these characters. I'm wondering, why do they have to pretend like they haven't seen each other in 20 years? That part doesn't really totally seem necessary, but if you went through something like this, it would be totally justifiable to stay in touch with that person over the years. So I'm not sure why they had to pretend in front of Jeff, but back in 1996, we have Misty run up to the cabin. All the Yellowjackets are outside. Immediately, they grow concerned when they see the three girls running up. All three of them are out of breath from running there. And then right away, Laura Lee is like, show us the way. And they go out into the wilderness. They're looking for Van and Taissa. It's nighttime. And they see the flare and they run towards it in the dark. But then the scene changes like right away and we're back in the cabin. So what we didn't see was like the women, I guess, picking them up and carrying them back. That presumably happened. The girls are now tending to Van. They're trying to sew up her cheek. She writhes, gasps, screams in pain. It is brutal. All the girls struggle with witnessing it. I struggled with witnessing it. You probably struggled. It was rough. I mean, they clearly got to sew up the giant hole in her face, but like, knock the poor girl out or something. Does Nat have any more booze stashed away? Like, Laura Lee sees like the trauma, the horror of the moment of disturbing thing that Van is going through. And you see her process it. And like I said before, she wants to rescue the women. She cares about them. She does not want more of them to suffer the way that Van is suffering. And she's like ready to do something about it. We flash back to 2021, back to Taissa and Shauna. They are now in Callie's bedroom. They talk about what they would have done if like the plane crash had never happened. And Shauna's is like really cute. It seems incredibly thought out. Like this is clearly a fantasy that's she's had before. Liberal arts college and met like a floppy haired guy, and they would have had like this competitive relationship as writers and whatever. And then she would have met a French mime. Like I don't even know. It was actually very amusing. And what I also liked about it was that while she's telling this kind of absurd, it wasn't absurd until the French mime part, but this kind of like well thought out and detailed fantasy, Taissa is just responding and reacting as if it was all real, and like she's indulging it, and it's very cute. And the way that they're talking and like the strength of their friendship, the closeness that they show, it kind of all harkens back to that flashback that we saw a few episodes ago of Shauna and Jackie. Like, it was a memory Shauna had of herself and Jackie. They're sitting on the bed. They're talking about boys. They're talking about Jackie's crush on Jeff. They're laughing. And in that scene, you saw the closeness between Jackie and Shauna, which is now clearly being fractured in the 1996 timeline, but which we see a version of in the 2021 timeline through the relationship between Taissa and Shauna. So it's almost like Taissa has replaced Jackie in Shauna's life, or at least that's the way it comes across in this scene. Taissa's plan for the future actually is just the same thing as what happened. It's what she went on to do after the crash, but she feels as though none of it was real. Then we cut to Nat. This is still 2021. She's trying to get information about Travis's bank account. Whoever she's on the phone with is not going to help her. She loses her mind. She goes on like a Karen rant. Talk to your manager. Like, what? I never really thought of Nat as like a Karen type, but she went on that let me talk to your manager rant like a pro. So she falls to the ground in her fit, and she finds like this like kind of pile of blow that's on the rug. She starts scooping it up. She looks extremely pleased and thrilled to find it and wasted. Then it cuts to Misty in 2021. She's going down to the basement to see Jessica, and Jessica has Caligula, the parrot, or maybe it's not a parrot, whatever kind of bird it is, in a chokehold, and is threatening to wring his neck unless Misty frees her. So Misty bluffs at first, and she's like, oh, I'll just get another one. Jessica's like, all right, then. And it seems like she's actually going to do it. And in that moment, Misty goes berserk and like screams, starts throwing stuff. I'm not sure what she was throwing. Starts throwing things that were breaking behind Jessica's head. And Caligula gets away. As he flies away up the stairs, Misty's yelling behind him, like, my baby, my poor little boy. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean a word. Oh my God, it was hysterical. I'm sorry. She kills me. But like, honestly though, yes, Misty is absolutely insane. She has Jessica, captive in her basement. So, there's no justifying this. But at the same time, I was like, ooh, I know that if somebody threatened one of my animals, I would for sure kill them. So, yeah. I was a little concerned that she was just going to walk right up to Jess and just start beating her to death. But shockingly, like the opposite happened, and instead they had this like weird little moment where they were being nice to each other, and Jess was like, are you okay? And then Missy was like, I'm gonna make us some food. Like, what is going on? It's honestly such a bizarre relationship. Why is Jessica asking if Misty is okay? Like, why is she concerned about Misty, who's her captor? Finally, we cut back to 1996. Shauna and Ty are back in that attic area where only the two of them will sleep, even still. I'm kind of surprised that Ty is not by Van's side. Van is presumably downstairs sleeping, probably by the fire to stay warm, but I'm just surprised that Ty isn't with her. But maybe she needs this time to speak to Shauna and to kind of confide in her, because we see her tell Shauna about Van's injury being her fault, about how she was supposed to be watching, but she fell asleep and wound up in the tree, and she must have been sleepwalking. She blames herself for Van's injury, and she's scared to go to sleep. So Shauna offers to stay awake and make sure she doesn't go anywhere. And when the scene ends, she's kind of they're like spooning, obviously in a friendly way, but she's kind of also holding her. So that way, if Ty actually tries to go anywhere, Shauna will know. So this is obviously the first time, maybe the first of many, where Shauna has played this role for Taissa, and we see that in 2021, she still plays this role for her. Then we see Shauna and Taissa back, in Callie's bed, chatting again, confiding each other. Shauna tells Ty that she's having an affair, and Taissa's not that upset about it. She's not judgmental about what Shauna's telling her. Ty basically says she doesn't feel it with Simone, but their relationship is safe, it's stable, and that every time that she's had that feeling that Shauna has with Adam, with somebody else, it's never been a relationship that was actually healthy for her. We do see that sometimes in life those crazy passionate relationships end in mutual destruction. Hi.
Hi. So when I get here, where should I park? In 2 minutes.
Oh, you're almost here?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I ain't here for a long time, just a good time, right?
Okay. Well, my sister's here, so I have to take a brief break. So I'll probably look totally different when I finish this wrap up. But I will see you guys in about 5 seconds. All right, guys. Sorry about the interruption. By the time my sister left, it was late, and I wasn't getting good light, so I decided to wait. Sorry that this episode is definitely going to come to you pretty late this week. I'm going to try to do better next week and make sure that, we hit while you guys are still really curious and have all those questions. I left off in 2021. Shauna decides to flip the script and show up at Adam's apartment. It's like a warehouse loft style space. And this does track with the idea of him being this artistic type that he has sold himself to be. So it's possible that maybe some of what he is saying about himself to Shauna is real. Or at least, we all know that the best way to lie is to have an element of the truth. So maybe that's what he's doing. When she knocks on his door and he comes to the door, he seems pretty surprised, and she kind of just like barges in and just like, my turn. So she's definitely trying to kind of catch him out, trying to show him like, you're not the only one who could show up at someone's house. He looks nervous as soon as she walks in, and I'm thinking, we all are suspicious of Adam. We all know he's playing some kind of game. Something is going on. His motivation for being with her is definitely not like purely physical or purely romantic. There's something else behind it. She's starting to come to that realization finally. When she comes to him, it's harder for him to keep up this persona that he's trying to sell her. So Shauna right away, she says, oh, I realize I barely know you. And she starts prying about his experience at the Pratt Art School. She's trying to see how many lies she could catch him in. He pretty much realizes that right off the bat and knows that she knows he's full of shit. But he had this excuse about, well, actually, my girlfriend went to Pratt. I don't know about you guys, but I knew people like that in college who actually weren't enrolled in my school, but who were there so often that they would actually tell people that they went to my university. So it's a pretty lame story, but somewhat believable. Shauna's clearly not sure what to think at this point. She's just kind of standing there like not in disbelief, but in disappointment. He says their relationship is real. He offers to take her for a weekend in a cabin in the woods to the Poconos, which, that actually sounds pretty good to me. I enjoy going to the Poconos, but for Shauna, who was forced to live in a cabin in the woods for over a year, this is probably not her idea of a relaxing vacation, but she seems interested, so she kind of just accepts this, or at least seems interested in going. She asks him how she's supposed to explain this to, her family, and he basically says, I don't give a shit. So he just is playing it like, I just want you there. I don't give a shit how you achieve it. Just make it happen. So he's still playing this game like he's super interested in her. But listen, if it is true that Adam is Javi, then maybe he is super interested in Shauna, because we definitely see that it looks like the young Javi is interested in her. But if Callie's theories are true and he is just somebody who's trying to link himself with the Yellowjacket, then we really don't know if he's even interested in her at all, or if he's just purely playing this game. So, leave some comments and let me know what you think, because whether he's Javi or not, even if he is Javi, it doesn't answer the question of why is he inserting himself into Shauna's life in the way that he is. We cut back to 1996. Laura Lee is awake. All the rest of the women are sleeping. She wakes up the girls kind of cruelly by banging on a bunch of stuff, making a bunch of noise. But then right away she tells them she's flying the plane south. She says, we need to get out of here. The other mission didn't work. Van needs medical attention. And then right away, Jackie's like, ooh, she's not the only one. We all knew what was coming. Jackie puts Shauna on the spot and is like, tell them, Shauna. And at that point, what is Shauna supposed to do other than tell them? So she tells the other women she's pregnant. Right away, they're all shocked. Oh my God, you were having sex? And now she's forced to not only, explain herself. Yes, I was having sex. Now they want to know, of course, I'm sure they're going to be asking who, and she has to now double down on this lie that it was Randy. Plus, she has to come out as being like the vulnerable one that they all need to save. What Shauna doesn't necessarily know is that Jackie is doing this out of spite. right? If she did not know that Shauna had been sleeping with her boyfriend, which she discovered reading the diary, I don't know that she would call her out this way. But like I said earlier, she is just trying to hurt people in this episode. Then they kind of get back on the topic of Laura Lee and this mission that she wants to go on to fly the plane. And Coach Ben is like, you can't. I'm still the only adult here. Like, it's a no. And in that moment, the energy really turns. Like, Laura Lee's like, what are you going to do to stop me? And all the other women, like, they don't physically get up and stand by her and, like, kind of face off against the coach. But there's this feeling in the air like a mutiny could occur at any moment. Yeah, it feels like almost threatening from the women towards the coach. I don't know if you guys picked up on that vibe at all, but in that moment, they definitely wanted to communicate to him, like, you might be the adult, but you're not in charge. And he backs down. When Laura Lee does double down and say that she's going to fly the plane for both now Van's sake and Shauna's sake, there's this quick moment where the camera cuts to Jackie's face and she's smirking and she looks very pleased with herself. I really think she wanted Laura Lee to, absorb this risk. So that's why she was kind of pushing, just wanting to put Shauna on blast. She also used it as an additional motivator for Laura Lee to follow through with her plan. I'm wondering if Jackie, outing Shauna's pregnancy is going to contribute to the divide between the women that I believe is eventually going to cause there to be, two rivaling groups. I think that we're just seeing this divide going further and further. Back in 2021, Nat walks into AA. She goes up to after the meeting, she walks up to a woman, and right away this woman's like, "Oh, fuck you." Clearly she's not pleased to see Nat. So Nat says, "Don't worry, I won't assault you again." Nat convinces this woman to speak with her, saying that she was the best sponsor she ever had. She got her like nobody else could. She's just out of rehab. She needs somebody to talk to. Then they go to a cafe, and Nat begins to confide in this woman, I think her name is Suze, that Travis is dead, and she knows it's not just a suicide. And the woman even notices that for the first time, it kind of seems like Nat's not lying. Normally, every word out of her mouth sounds like bullshit, but this one time she can just tell that there is that tone of honesty behind what she's saying, and she truly believes what she's saying to be true. Then she asks, right when she has Suze's sympathy, she asks her to help her investigate Travis's bank account right away. This woman realizes, she's trying to use me again. Typical Nat. She'll use and hurt anyone to get what she wants, and she is not about it. So then Nat doubles down and says, "Well, I thought you might say that." So she threatens to essentially call the woman's job, which is a bank, and tell them that the two of them used to feed their drug or drinking habit by selling the customer's personal information to identity thieves. So the scene ends with Sue saying, "I wish I never fucking met you." And, if Nat continues the way she is, pretty much every single person in her life is going to have that attitude towards her, because she is just burning bridges left, right, and center. Back in 1996, the girls are clearing off the plane, the surrounding area. They're creating a runway of sorts for the plane to take off. Even the coach is helping. It seems like everyone's out there helping. And we see Shauna go up to Jackie and basically say, "Was it necessary to tell everyone?" Jackie plays innocent, going, "Oh, how could I not?" Shauna doesn't seem to be buying it, though, because she seems really angry. She rips some branch out of the ground and just kind of walks away. And she looks pissed. Then in 2021, Taissa goes back home and she finally tells Simone what has been going on. About time, girl. She tells her about the sleepwalking. She explains to both Simone and the audience that the sleepwalking was a big problem when she was stranded in the wilderness, but then after they were rescued, it stopped for a while, and now the stress of the election has brought it up as an issue once again. Now notice, she says it stopped for a long time after we were rescued. So now this is very interesting. The women at some point obviously are going to be rescued, but it sounds like, based on that phrasing, that perhaps they're not going to escape of their own volition, that they will in fact, maybe a rescue team will find them. Whether that is as a result of something that the girls do to make the outside world aware of their location or not remains to be seen, but she uses the word rescued. She didn't say escaped, so that was definitely something that I noticed and wanted to bring up for you guys to consider. Simone is initially very supportive with what Taissa is telling her. She says, they'll get her whatever help she needs to get through this, that she's there for her. But then Taissa basically says she just wants her to leave the house with Sammy, get them out of there, and that it's for their own safety. I really wonder what Simone makes of all Ty's strange behavior and if we're going to see her take on it at some point. And I'm also wondering, if Sammy has seen Taissa sleepwalking around enough times that he has essentially deduced that there's a second version of her. How has Simone never noticed her wife getting out of bed and sleepwalking? Still in 2021, we see Shauna, she's looking in a full-length mirror. She's holding up that yellow dress that Jeff bought for her. She does not look thrilled. And then she goes to her closet and she sees that there is glitter on the floor. We see her remember Adam hiding in the closet. Clearly, she attributes the glitter to, the moment when he was in there. And then she opens the safe and it is empty. Shauna is shook. The scene ends with her banging on Adam's door and asking, "Who the fuck are you?" First thing I was thinking of was well, what was in there? So I kind of had to tick back in my memory, and the only things I could think of that were even in the safe was that burner cell phone that she was using to call Ty earlier in the season, and then there were some journals, right? So we know that Shauna has been journaling for a long time, so it is possible that those are all her journals, or maybe some of the journals belong to some of the other Yellowjackets, or maybe even some of the women who didn't survive. Time will tell. Why would Adam steal those journals? Maybe to sell a story that does kind of support what Callie was saying, that he could just be somebody who's trying to sell a story or get information on the Yellowjackets. Shauna immediately thinks of Adam. They want us, the audience, to immediately think of Adam, but who else uses that closet? Jeff. This could easily be a misdirection, and it could be, as many people have theorized, that Jeff is actually the person who was behind the blackmail, who had the glitter all over him, and then traipsed the glitter into the closet. It is his closet after all. Alternatively, Taissa was also just in the house, but we know that she's not the one who traipsed the glitter in. But it is possible that she was the one who cleared out the safe. The friendship and the bond and the closeness between these two makes me think that they would not betray each other's trust. But, as far as people who have been in that home that we've seen besides Shauna, it's basically just Adam, Jeff, Taissa, and Callie. Then we are back in 1996. There's this kind of tribal, ethereal music playing. Laura Lee is walking towards the plane. She's about to depart on her mission to fly south. She feels like she's about to save them all. As she walks towards the plane, she's hugging one or two of the women, having private individual moments with them. Then there is a group hug. And throughout this scene, she seems scared, but also resigned. Doesn't seem like anyone is going to talk her out of this, even if they were trying to. And really, the coach is the only one who tries. She gives Lottie a really big hug because we've seen that those two have been bonding. Lottie does not warn her against going. So at this point, I'm sitting next to my husband on the couch and I'm going, well, I pretty much know what's going to happen. And I turned to him and I said, she's going to take off and it's going to it's all going well for about a second and then she's going to crash and burn, right? And he's like, yeah. So we basically saw it coming. But the one thing that made me think, okay, maybe she won't crash and burn in front of all the other women, or even worse, explode, was the fact that Lottie didn't warn her against going. And in the last episode, when Van had her near-death experience, Lottie did have a warning for her. She tried to give her that bone to protect her and all of that. So I'm thinking that Laura Lee maybe actually will live because Lottie hasn't seen otherwise. Now I'm going to get back to that. But anyway, she's walking towards the plane. The music is really ramping up the anxiety. I'm sitting on the edge of my couch cushion. Then Coach Ben tries to do one last-ditch effort to talk her out of this. And she basically just says, thank you for caring, Coach, but this is my purpose. And she closes the door on him. She straps her little bear in with the seatbelt and starts the plane engine. One side note, we saw the whole scene of the women clearing the debris, cleaning off the plane, and clearing a pathway for takeoff, but Why did no one clean that plane window? It ended up not mattering, but I'm like yelling at the TV going, she can't see anything through the window. You would think somebody might have cleaned that off, but anyway, I digress. She hits the right speed, she lifts off, all the women are cheering, running towards the lake, they're exalted. Laura Lee's flight appears to be going well, it's gonna be successful. She turns and says to her little teddy bear, we're really gonna save them all. But then, no, the bear is on fire. What the fuck? Now at first, I thought this was supernatural, perhaps, but maybe it was just an engine fire, but the way that just the bear looked like it was on fire at first seemed kind of weird, maybe supernatural. Jackie sees the smoke. We get a zoomed in shot of Laura Lee's face, and you see like she knows what's about to happen. She knows she's fucked. And then the women are all watching and they see the plane explode. The reactions were so heartbreaking. Just various shots of the women in shock, in horror, just devastated for what they've just witnessed. So now I want to go back to what I was saying before about Lottie. I realized after this episode ended that Lottie did see Laura Lee's demise, but it happened 2 episodes ago. The vision, I should say. She had a vision of Laura Lee's demise in episode 6, but I didn't associate it because that's why I'm sitting there going, but she didn't have a vision of anything bad happening, so it should all be fine. But then I remembered that scene where Laura Lee performed the baptism of sorts on Lottie, and there was a moment where she's looking up through the water, she sees Laura Lee's face, and then there's that explosion and her face goes dark. Laura Lee said that she saw Jesus or God. Well, what she really saw was Laura Lee's demise. She got a vision of her death by explosion, by fire. So that's, when that hit me, I was like, oh snap. Because the one reason I thought she might make it was because Lottie didn't see otherwise, but it turns out she did after all. So just a couple last thoughts on different characters. Let's start with Natalie. In 1996, Natalie's conversation with the coach shows maturity and empathy. Yes, she has a tendency to lie, but she's mostly a level-headed person. She's intuitive. She's nothing like the spiteful person that she will become and that we see her become in the later timeline. There wasn't a ton from young Taissa later on in the episode. In the beginning of the episode, we see her grappling over guilt over what happened to Van, and we also see the beginnings of her being afraid of herself and of her sleepwalking. So I'm very interested to see how that storyline develops. For Misty, the 1996 Misty wasn't a huge player in this episode. We saw her running back to the group to get help for Van. We saw her react to the news of Shauna's pregnancy, helping with the airplane cleanup, reacting to Laura Lee's death, but that was about it. Older Misty seems to be falling apart. I don't know. Maybe it was just the cocaine, but she just seems frazzled and weird in this episode. Even Jessica Roberts is wondering if she's okay, and I'm pretty sure that qualifies as Stockholm Syndrome, so... I wonder if that plot line will get wrapped up in this season. I won't be surprised if in the last episode Misty kills Jessica. We'll have to see. Shauna. 1996 Shauna. I feel so bad for her. You saw the betrayal on her face when Jackie outed her. I definitely think she was on to the fact that Jackie's innocence and earnestness act was total bullshit. So we'll have to see if she confronts her in the next episode. And Jackie, so much instigating in this episode. Fights between Travis and Nat, telling the women about Shauna's pregnancy, making Travis feel insecure, playing dumb, playing innocent. Even making Laura Lee feel as though she's justified in taking the risk in order to save Shauna and Van. Jackie's losing me. I loved her the first couple episodes. She was one of my favorite characters, but now Jackie's out. And then finally, Adam. Adam just keeps getting more suspicious. He's lied. He has no internet presence. There's nothing backing up his identity, except for I guess he did have an ID. Is he Javi? Most people think so. It almost seems too obvious at this point that he's Javi. But it's also weird that if he's Javi that Shauna wouldn't recognize him, so... If he is Javi, I'm very interested in seeing how they explain that component. If he's not Javi, is he maybe just the blackmailer and he knows about the women's backstory when they were lost in the wilderness through some other connection? He definitely orchestrated his first meeting with Shauna by stopping short and making her rear end him. And then everything since then has been suspicious. So we're going to have to see. I do believe that we will get the answer to the Adam puzzle in this season. But anyway, I will be back next week with a recap and analysis of Season 1, Episode 9 of Yellowjackets. I'm really looking forward to this one. Just 2 more episodes left, and we all know that the penultimate episode of a season like this is bound to be a good one. So I will see you next time on Purple Vice JC. Bye, guys.